So Elizabeth had asked me to talk about the current federal opportunities. I think before some of the federal folks committed, but that's okay, because you'll have maybe some depth knowledge to ask them some really tough questions. The American Graduation Initiative. He said he wanted an additional 5 million community college graduates by 2020. And so as part of that, he wanted a community college challenge fund, which would really allow community colleges to pursue the kind of innovation that Rob has talked about, as well as fund innovative approaches to college completion writ large through the Access and Completion Fund, to provide money to modernize community college facilities, as well as create a new online skills laboratory, which is kind of interesting. So this bill that includes these programs that the president had outlined is the House Bill Student Aid and Fiscal Responsibility Act, indexing Pell to inflation, which is a big deal because over the course of several years, the Pell Grant was not increased. Overhauling the Perkins Loan Program, increasing it from $1 billion a year to $6 billion a year, and that's a loan program that's targeted toward very low-income students. $1.2 billion for historically black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions for this sort of completion activities, and that's also a huge increase. Also, this open online education, as well as the community college initiative that I'll talk about in a second. So the College Access and Completion Fund is $3 billion. The express goal of it is to fund, promote innovation in post-secondary ed practices and policies by institutions, states, and nonprofits to improve post-secondary access and success, completion, and post-completion employment. There's also funding in there for states to develop longitudinal data systems. There is funding for that in the State Fiscal Stabilization Fund. There's funding for that in the Race to the Top Fund. There is a separate RFP that was just put out from the feds a couple weeks ago around this. So the writing is on the wall. It's not even writing on the wall. It's skywriting. And everyone should be seeing that there's money for this and that it's something that needs to be happening now. So the College Access, next slide please, has 4 different programs. The State Innovation Completion Grants are matching grants. 50% of the fund, the fund will go toward that. The federal share will be 2/3 of the cost. I figure I should mention federal state share. The use of funds in this program are varied, to be candid, and represent a lot of the different goals that we've heard about over the last several years. Increasing financial literacy, decreasing the amount of student indebtedness, as well as grant aid. And that component of it really focuses on partnerships between CBOs and higher ed institutions, as we were just talking about, corporations and philanthropy, as well as up to 10% of the funds being able to be used for this longitudinal data system work. Another program in there that it's going to be funding is the College Access Challenge Grants. Funding for that can be used for providing information to students and families regarding post-secondary ed and career prep, conducting outreach activities, assisting students in completing the FAFSA, as well as providing need-based aid and conducting professional development at secondary schools around counseling and advising about going on to college. The Community College Initiative, we're excited about the fact that this initiative has the potential to be jointly administered by Labor and Education. $730 million will go for the first part of the grants, geared toward community college reform, $680 million for the latter half. So again, we're talking big bucks here. So these are 4-year competitive grants for innovative programs or programs of demonstrated effectiveness. Again, this sort of emphasis on something that works or finding out what works. That lead to completion. And so it's really focused on what does it take to get students to the other end of the door. The grant is fairly good size. The priority will be given to entities that enter partnerships with philanthropies, research organizations with relevant expertise, businesses, labor, or being an HBCU or MSI. Again, recognizing that those tend to be under-resourced institutions, and those serving non-traditional students. There are a handful of benchmarks that the grants will be measured, success will be measured against. If the institutions aren't making progress toward those, by year 3, the grant will be discontinued. The federal share of these grants will be 1/2 with a state match of cash or in kind again. They're, of course, encouraging, again, businesses can help put up the cost of this, philanthropies, all of that. So the use of funds, in a lot of ways, the community college initiative is more specific about what it's shooting for. The institutions and the states need to be thinking about 4 or 5 different targeted areas, and that includes increasing the number of students who are transitioning between 2 and 4-year degrees, entering into sort of workforce business, partnerships with business, providing student support services, creating workforce programs that lead to a sequence of education and occupational training that lead to industry recognized credentials, blending basic skills and occupational training. So when you think about integrated approaches, bridge programs for low-skilled folks, advancing individuals on a career path toward high-wage occupations. So these will be 6-year grants to implement the systematic reform of the community colleges. So to scale up everything and really shift the way community college works in your state. The idea is that 90% of these funds would flow through the states to community colleges, but then the states would ensure that kind of big-time reform that the feds want to see takes place. And in all of these, I always am careful to say with states right now, there's a supplement, not supplant clause, because I know that budgets are horrible. They're going to be worse next year. So we're sympathetic toward that. So this is really exciting. It's a bundle of money. Look at the grant size, $2 million to $20 million for statewide longitudinal data systems. So these are grants to enable state educational agencies to design and develop statewide longitudinal systems. You're going to get into it. But the big thing that I think is exciting is that it just isn't post-secondary and K through 12. It's workforce. It's all of the big kahuna. Probably a lot of you already know about the State Fiscal Stabilization Fund, but that's the big, the billions and billions of dollars that went to the states that could be divided up between higher ed and K through 12. And then the Race to the Top Fund, the regulations, that's the next slide, were just released. And obviously, similar to the State Fiscal Stabilization Fund, there are the 4 targets for reform. These are the same ones that were in the state. So that's all I have. I know it was a ton of money. I always feel guilty when someone asks me to talk about legislation and federal programs in 10 to 15 minutes. So I apologize. But as I said, I'll have my PowerPoint to Elizabeth.
Great. So thank you so much. That was a wealth of information and